Greetings, great people, or great Abyssinian people. This video proves as long as you is a descendant of one of those who was captured and taken away from what is now called Africa, the older you get is the more you know. The more you will find out about the various levels of twist and turn where the slave master, and in this case, the slave mistress, have us in to keep us under their command forever. As we learn, we find out other stages of domination which is secretly in place by those who enslaved us for over 400 years without pay. And in this case, it is the Queen of England. What we are going to learn today is information where support a range of domestication disciplines that is already in place. You will be shockingly amazed at the levels of mental control system white folks use to keep us tied to them, working for them and supporting them economy and them propaganda, even when it go against our interests as a group, whether we are in or out of what is now called Africa. Listen to this.
That's in focus now. My brother Bert Samuels, an African attorney at law, is in the studio. Take a quick break. We come back to talk about the visitor. And Bert is not visiting. He's a family member. He's dropped in. All right, we'll talk about the visitor in a little while. Good morning to you, my dear brother Bert Samuels.
Morning, Sister Kabu. Good to be here.
You've come through the hills, have you?
Yes, I sent Mary my drive through.
Well, you know, they should have known I sent Mary you come from.
Let them know, sent Mary up I get.
You know, and I don't know if we've had this conversation while you've been in the studio, but there are some of us who are from St. Mary, and proudly so. And you know what's the interesting thing about it is that we're from the same little area.
Look at that.
Yeah, walk the same roads. And,
of course, everyone. Then how come we had so many things in common?
Yes.
St. Mary.
That, of course, includes Vereen Shepherd.
Of course.
And I don't know if you know Timothy Bailey, but yeah. But we talk about Timothy later on. But quite a few of us are from that very same little area there in St. Mary. And our Broadway is just on top of a hill.
Okay.
Right, so lots of us from there. All right, thank you so much, my brother, for coming in at short notice. I read your article in the paper, and I sent you an email with 100 exclamation signs.
Yes.
And you responded. The visitor, Bert.
The visitor.
The visitor. Who is a visitor?
Well, UWI, University of the West Indies, was a college of the University of London during colonial times, and during that time she imposed herself, the visitor, on that institution. The visitor is the Queen of England, Elizabeth II. She's the one that, believe it or not, rules the University of the West Indies. And it came about in a very interesting way, because I did a case in 2012. Person was a doctor, was doing his PhD, a medical doctor was doing his PhD, and was barred from the exams after he was given his timetable, everything. And we went to court to prevent UWI from banning him from the exams, and only to come upon this roadblock. And the lawyers for UWI argued against me. They said that we should go to the Queen of England. The courts are not, the Jamaican courts are not allowed to interfere with the affairs of the University of the West Indies. It is the Queen of England, called the visitor. It was the first time I was meeting on this concept, and I got so upset in court that the judge had to reprimand my behavior.
I can imagine. I can imagine. Are you still upset, actually?
Totally upset.
Bert, what does it mean? How does this work? I mean, why? It's fairly innocuous, the term, the visitor. But what does it entail?
Well, the British people themselves, centuries ago, had this idea of the monarchy being, the Queen can do no wrong, the King can do no wrong. So that by royal charter, many things came about in England, including the ship lines and other things like that. It came about centuries ago in England because we were part of the British the Commonwealth, the British property, Jamaica was owned by Britain and still is in some ways, because we inherited that system through colonialism. University of the West Indies has continued to be and remains the head of the university being the Queen of England.
Let me contextualize this a bit, because and you just did also. I have I've looked at the case that you mentioned with the PhD student at UWI, well, the medical doctor, and then we have Suzette Cotella, who is also a PhD student at UWI. I know this is not your case. You just read about it.
Yes,
I've had lengthy discussions with Suzette over the years about her the challenges she faced and she was facing at UWI regarding completing her PhD. But can you put it in a nutshell in terms of what you've read and what you know about this case, just to contextualize why today we find it necessary to bring this out into the open?
Yes, well, having been defeated in 2012 and been very disappointed, I read the newspapers about 3 weeks ago, and saw where the same thing reoccurred. And I was just saying, we're entering 2016, and here is a PhD student again seeking justice from the court. She had a complaint against University of the West Indies, regarding what courses she should have done.
A Rastafarian student,
Okay, she is.
Yes.
Look at that. I didn't know at the time. Mm-hmm. And therefore she felt that she could go to the court, because the Constitution of Jamaica says that the courts, are the final arbiter of our problems. And having gone there, they brought back the same point was being used by the University of the West Indies attorneys, that the courts, unlike any other, most of the institutions in the country, the courts are in charge of us. We can regulate. Judges are supreme. The judges are not supreme. You'd have liked to oversee where there's a case of injustice. Mm-hmm. It is the visitor, and this is the Queen of England. I just can't believe that it is continuing and nothing has been done about it.
And why, the Queen of England and not the Governor General?
No, it makes no... Well, the point I made in my article is that because the Royal Charter had the Queen of England before we, as a visitor, before independence, well, so-called independence, before the Constitution. Therefore, it is straight to the visitor. It doesn't allow her representative in Jamaica, the Governor General, it seems, to intervene, unless maybe if she appoints him to do it. But for the moment, the visitor is the Queen of England and no one else.
All right, help us to understand something else now. All right, so the visitor is specific to the University of the West Indies.
Yes.
And you give us the historical context of that, how that came about. Professor Bain, for example, who went through courts, didn't he go through the courts too? He was not referred to the visitor.
No, he was not referred to the visitor. And I was not the attorney in that matter, so I don't want to kind of pronounce on what's happening. Well, he's a teacher, right? So this is a student matter, and lawyers like to say, this matter is one that you have to look at the facts. These cases I've dealt with, Dr. Maat and
Suzette Cotella.
Yes, these are students.
Mm-hmm.
Bain
so this
was
pertains
a lecturer,
to students specifically.
Yeah.
So that if I'm a student at University of the West Indies and I have a grouse, as in Mary's case, where you're not allowed to sit an examination, it goes to the court, you're representing Mary, and then you're broadsided in court to say what?
The lawyer said, listen, we are not in the right place. Mr. Samuels, he argued that, it's the Queen, not the judge that's sitting in court.
So where should you be, at Buckingham Palace?
Apparently. If you can get the visa to go there. Because how that has worked, After we went there and fought their 2 wars, and they were through with us. About 10, 15 years ago, they required visas from us to visit London. Yes. I don't think they envisage any more fights with boots on the ground. So we are no longer of use to them. They're throwing us out.
We still have, our grand and great grands who boast of, being part of the British institution in some way.
Yes.
Right. But, all right. So forgive me, Bert, if I'm going at this in a very naive way, but I read this.
Yeah.
And, which is the
That's
case with Myri's case.
That's 2012, was it?
Yes.
Yeah.
But I'm still at a loss, because what does this mean for future, and we see with Suzette's case.
Yes.
But if a student has a grouse, is it that the student should not take it to the court? They should first of all try to get it through the visitor, and how do they do that?
Your guess is as good as mine. I don't know how to approach this woman. I wouldn't be able to tell my client, because it's so alien. When I was at the law school, I never had contemplated that we would have to go to the Queen of England with matters for UA. So I can't give that advice. I don't know. Her lawyer has said in the report that she's going to approach the Queen of England to settle a dispute in Jamaica. Now, this is an institution that I don't know that a pound has been sent to it by this Queen of England to finance our education. I mean, because I'm part of the Reparation Commission's work, I'm saying, isn't this interesting? If she's ruling over the university at the moment, and we're saying that we need reparation for the fact that, we have not been given any assistance in terms of education, health, and other things, then if she's that, then what part of the budget of UA is she contributing to? So we call upon the University of the West Indies to disclose, give us disclosure about what has the Queen of England done to finance the UA so that she continues to be the head of UA. And I'm sure it's zero.
Well, isn't the head of the CARICOM Reparations Commission the principal of UA?
Very interesting, Professor
Hilary
Beckles.
Does he know that she's a visitor? I'm just...
well,
no.
Let me tell you, there are persons who are professors at university who I was the one acquainting them with that concept 3-4 months ago. I won't tell you who it is. You and I know who it is. Yes. And she was very alarmed that this was happening. It was not something that she knew before. So these are
because it's just quietly there on the books.
Yes.
Until
you're seeking your rights.
Yes.
And then the UA's attorneys, they have that in their bag, and they pull it out every time that a student is seeking justice. And it's definitely what it amounts to. It's a bar, because I don't know how to get to that lady. I mean, do you go to get a visa, and then what do you do? Do
you go to the Governor General at all?
I don't know.
Isn't he representing?
Well, if you know me well, that was the end of the matter for me. I was not going to bow to any queen or any queen's representative.
But let me ask you, Bert. So with Myri, what was the outcome? Because he was sent to the visitor.
He was sent to the visitor. His attorney and Mr. Myri of the view that we had no intentions of going that route. That was a dark road which others in our history have sought to approach this woman, with naivety. I mean, the people sent her and petitioned her. I'm not into that. I couldn't, myself and Mr. Myri, who was Rastafarian too, Interestingly enough,
yes,
we took the position that our queen is in Ghana, up in Kumasi.
Okay. All right. Yes.
I call her the Queen of England. I say that. And I just want the public to understand. Do not refer to this woman as the Queen. When you say the Queen, it means that you're accepting her as your Queen.
Yes.
I call her a queen, or the Queen of England. Yes.
All right. So, wow. And as you mentioned, that Myri is Rastafarian, and we know Suzette is. Then we have to look at how Rastafarians are treated at UA too.
Well, there is a coincidence that both these persons are Rastafarians, and they have been told to go to Alien Queen.
Yes.
That's it's so embarrassing, and that is why in the article that I did, I tied that whole thing into our constitutional arrangement, because UA is just a small part of that which she oversees, and that's why I had to say that I want the Jamaican public to know other things about the Constitution. I see you looking at your time signal.
No, I want to go right there. I just want to take the time signal quickly.
Good.
And come back and go there, because I think there's nowhere else to go but right there. So 17 minutes now after 7 o'clock, and isn't this interesting? We're we're talking about a term that when we said a visitor, we just expect that somebody coming to visit you. We didn't know that it was a legal term. Is it written into the Constitution?
Nowhere in the Jamaican Constitution you'll find the word visitor. As I said, it collided with me in 2012. I was taken aback. I was in shock when in the courtroom the point was not told to me before. The UA attorneys just threw it at me, ambushed me with the point, and I wasn't prepared for it. Still not prepared for it mentally or legally.
All right, so the Constitution.
Yes.
It seems when we talk about we've had a conversation over years, many years, consistently removing the Queen,
the Queen of England,
looking again at the Constitution,
yeah.
But I don't think that we have really stopped to look at how the tentacles and how she's deeply woven into the fabric of Jamaica's life, legally, constitutionally, and otherwise. You think you remove the Queen of England as the head of state, but there's so much more involved. Talk to us about that.
Well, the first thing is, if during the Facebook conversation on this article, someone said, Mr. Samuels, she's just a ceremonial head, and please, if she was just a ceremonial head, then that student would not have to go to her.
Those two students,
students, wouldn't have to go to her. So this is a constitutional arrangement. Remember now, Jamaican public has to know that the Constitution was basically presented at Buckingham Palace in April 1962. Mm-hmm. In July, I think, in 1962. So that is where it was passed. An order was given by the Queen of England, putting into place the Jamaica Constitution. And there are three divisions of government. You have the judiciary, you have the executive, which is the cabinet, and you have the legislature, which is the parliament. The Queen of England is the head of the parliament. The Queen of England is the head of the judiciary, because the Privy Council is Her Majesty in Council. The Privy Council belongs to the Queen. You appeal to the Queen and she goes to the Privy Council. So that the three divisions of government are headed by the Queen of England. And also, as you read, there can be no law passed in Jamaica unless there is at the beginning of the law in the name of Her Majesty the Queen. That has to be recited for every piece of legislation that the Parliament of Jamaica passes. Okay. You must use those words. So, are we independent? Are we still under colonial rule? And the answer to that is constitutionally yes.
I'm allowing you to sink in.
Yeah, so those of us who think that, it's, in 1962 when that British flag came down, Union Jack, and the Jamaican flag went up, that England left our shores, the British government, the Queen of England, continues to be head of the Constitution of Jamaica.
What does that mean for how parliamentarians exercise their duties, especially ministers of government? Let us look at the Ministry of Education, for example.
Yes.
If the Queen is the head of Parliament and head of state, the Queen of England, and head of state, then what do we say, and what can we say about our curriculum? Because we have a problem with the curriculum.
Well, you remember now, if you teach your children correctly, then they'd understand that we were enslaved by the British government. The Queen of England had slaves. Her family had slaves. And therefore, if we continue to have her as the head, then the students are going to collide with how can people who supervise or Holocaust, how can they continue to be at the helm of all the institutions of Jamaica?
But the question, Bert, is are our students being taught that we were enslaved by the British government? Or, as Mr. Franklin Johnson, the advisor, one of the chief advisors to the Minister of Education, says that Africa is the only country that sold its people into slavery and continued to sell its people into slavery. He said that in his October 2 article in the Jamaica Observer. By the way, today is 100 days. Today marks marks 100 days since he said that, and we have not had any response from Reparations Commission, CARICOM Reparations Commission, or from anybody in the Ministry of Education or anywhere. Are our children being taught that the British enslaved our ancestors?
As far as I know, not in the way it should be. It's about maybe 2 lines in the history books, where it should be an entire chapter.
Yes, I did history at school all the way to A-levels.
Yes.
And we never get teaching. I didn't get it. Not in that way. And things might have changed because it's been a while.
You know,
But,
I continue to repeat this point. If you are in France and you publish an article tomorrow that the Holocaust didn't take place, you've committed a crime and you can be imprisoned. That's how Europe looks at 6 years of Nazism. That's how they look at it. And we have a country which came out of over 300 years of enslavement. And we are still courting the people who caused us to be enslaved and put them in our constitution. And we are still creating people in the minds of young people. That is why people want to bleach themselves to look the same color of this head of state. Don't you think there's a tie between our concept of who is good, who is powerful, who should be leading us, and who should we want to emulate and look like? And therefore, bleaching is not coincidental.
Bert, I'll tell you, I kind of lost some sleep last night over this particular issue, just reading again your article and having gone through the Maat case, because I felt for a moment hopeless, like it's bigger than us. How do we tackle this? What is to be done for independence? Because we cannot, just listening to you, reading your articles, we cannot claim to be independent unless we do not understand what it means to be independent.
And you know what hurts, and I made a point, this is, you know, one of the most recognized seats of learning in the country. And that institution where, you know, as you say, our history is headed by someone like that, doesn't it tell you why we're stifled, why we are yoked into this mode of thinking, and that if University of the West Indies is not setting an example for liberating the minds of our people. And that's why Marley said if he went to school much longer, he'd become a fool. You know, it's the miseducation that Bob Marley was speaking about, that, you know, as much as we have these high institutions of learning, there are some contradictions there that we need to wipe out.
And these go deep as you talk about the Constitution and talk about the 3 arms of the executive, the Parliament, and the judiciary, headed by the Queen. Journalism is a 4th estate, and we're the most powerful of all of them. What is the role of journalism in keeping this issue to the fore? I think is another question that we should be looking at, identifying our roles as journalists in keeping this on the front burner to make a change. But how do you change this?
Well, there's an event that is coming up this year, and there are people who are going to court the people to support them. I think it's time that, you know, the electorate put foot down and say end to colonialism in any form, be it, you know, ceremonial, some people are carrying it through, that the people, if you know, the journalists have this duty to educate the public that politicians can't come and ask us to vote for their parties unless they're going to set the record straight. And I think that this is the campaign that you, Kabu, and others will have to put out. We need to set the record straight and to remove her from every place. As I told you before, I guess you're tired of hearing this. Every morning in all the courts in Jamaica, the policeman gets and says, all stand, God save the Queen. It has to be said to open the courts of Jamaica every morning. Now, do you believe that we're still asking God to save someone who did so much wrong to us? Isn't that the continuation of our Holocaust, isn't it? And we are inside there with learned judges and learned lawyers and educated people accepting God Save the Queen in court every morning. So where are we going?
The prayer in Parliament, does it still include that line? Or
no, the oath was changed by a certain person. So that's out there. But, the Parliament is her Parliament. When I was a younger, when she visited, she gave her a throne speech that time, and she says, "My government in Jamaica." Those were the words of Elizabeth II. And she was speaking constitutionally correct when she did that. So it's her place. It belongs to her. Yui.
Yeah, but I don't know. You see, I'm looking at you based on television. People don't realize that I'm looking at. I forget that I'm supposed to be asking you questions, because I'm just looking. Is there where do you change it? I hear you say that the electorate should decide, right?
Yeah.
Or we have the power to decide. Do we have the power to decide? Because what is power without knowledge? What is power without knowing? What is power? I mean, how do you exercise a power that you don't even know that you have?
And one of the things about it, this miseducation that I keep talking about, don't think that if you go to the public, the misinformation given out there, you may meet upon your own people resisting removing the Queen. Because in our history, the long tradition has been that when we think something is going wrong down here, if we petition her, if she only knew these bad things were happening, then she would make the adjustment. And a big part of our history was this misbelief that the Queen was separate and apart from our oppressors.
How do we get so umbilically tied to Queen Elizabeth? I can't fathom it, because how come? Is it the education, the miseducation process? Is it what is it? Where did this happen? I know it's written into the Constitution, etc. But personally, how did we get so passionately engaged and tied to the British?
The first thing is, I think that when we fought and got our freedom, a lot of people educated us into thinking that the Queen gave us our freedom. So those of us who fought, and Sam Sharp and all others who gave their lives in the struggle for this, it has been told to us that the Queen gave us freedom in 1838. She's the one who gave us freedom. And therefore we went and fought 2 wars for her. We sang Britannia rules the wave. We were celebrating the British Army ruling the world down in Jamaica. And school children were taught. My parents were taught to sing and celebrate that warship as if we were part of it. And that's why we're prepared to go to Europe and fight their tribal wars for them. So that over the centuries, and people and educated people are still saying nothing wrong with the Queen being the head of Jamaica. So the miseducation has been centuries, and we're just looking at the manifestations of that.
Bert, I think, I don't want to sound insular or just keep these blinkers on, but I think the Ministry of Education, that the government on a whole, but the Ministry of Education in particular, has a serious job to do in looking again at the curriculum, because it's not too late to begin to be part of that paradigm shift. Or you deprogram the mind.
But that Ministry of Education needs to look internally too, based on that official who made that statement. The miseducation is within their ranks itself. Unless there's a commitment to have people, make a point of it to be sure that we wipe it from the minds of young people that the Queen of England was part of our enslavement. Then if we are not consciously doing that, we're going to have this just continue and people just leave it alone. We need to wipe her name out of the Constitution.
And that it part of the enslavement, but so integrally woven through the Constitution, and now even where it is not in the Constitution, through the University of the West Indies, where ordinary students can't even get justice. Because how the hell do you get to the Queen of England for justice as a student? I'm just seeing myself in that position. How do you get there?
That's a dead-end road that I have not ventured mentally or physically to go beyond the limits of that road, because I'm so embarrassed about this. They'd have to get another lawyer too. As you know, this Queen's Council thing, you know, I'm not into
Well, that's another thing too, because you wrote about the Privy Council in your article, and I thought then about the Queen's Council and so on. And you're saying that there are some judges that can't be removed, that can only be... Is it Privy Council you mentioned?
Yeah, let me explain the point.
Right. Okay.
You know, what we call security of tenure is that, or we make sure in any arrangement that our judges are confirmed and they can't be removed easily. But the Constitution, when it speaks about how we remove a High Court judge from misbehavior, for example, it is with the leave of the Queen. So you can't remove a High Court judge in Jamaica unless it goes through the Queen. But interestingly, the highest court being the Privy Council, there are no provisions in the Jamaican Constitution to remove a English judge, because the Privy Council judges are English judges. The highest court in Jamaica, for Jamaica, is the Privy Council, which is staffed by Caucasian English judges. So they have the final say in our lives. There is no provision how to remove any of those judges. The only provisions we have is how to remove the judges in Jamaica.
And it's interesting. It is interesting that, and I'm just making this connection at this moment, listening to Andrew Holness as the leader of the opposition in Parliament at the time, David Cameron's visit.
Oh, the move on, man.
The move on, right. Remember, Andrew Holness was one of the few persons, if not the only person, who actually made reference to the need for reparations in that space, or you could read it that way.
Yeah.
But at the same time, at the Senate level, opposes the Caribbean Court of Justice.
Yeah.
Those two things conflicting, you know.
Well, I guess he could. Well, remember, he's arguing for a final court to be in Jamaica, so both parties are asking for removal of the Privy Council. To be fair to him, yes. His position is it should not be replaced. The Privy Council should not be replaced by the Caribbean Court of Justice. It should be replaced by a Jamaican Final Court of Appeal. So, on his side, this
is like saying go to the visitor, isn't it? It's the same thing. But I want to open the phone lines, because I know that there are questions out there, and we have just a little bit under half an hour left in this segment. So the numbers to call are 974-5079, 5051, 5043, and 1-888-991-4152. I'm going to encourage persons who are going to call in with questions, so that we can further understand what we're hearing, and also to determine what our roles are in changing the situation. And nobody call for burn out the Queen, etc., because the whole way are burned that out already, and that is a given. So let us call now with questions that can help to change this situation. All right, I need to take a break, so take this call. All right, let me take this call and then go to the break. All right, why is it still ringing? Hotep?
Yeah, good morning.
Yes, greetings, my brother.
Happy New Year's, and I call it Uncle Justin.
Uncle Justin, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I have a question for Mr. Samuels. I think you asked him earlier, but I listened on my phone and I got a call. He said that elections is coming up, right? And the Jamaican people have a right to they remove the Queen from everywhere, but I want him to explain to me how that works, because ever since I was small, people tell us, you have a right to vote. But I'm a politician never come and do a promise people.
All
Nothing
right.
is there to hold them accountable. So I'm listening from my phone. So that
all right. Okay, we're going to take a break and then come back to that answer. Okay, Bert? All right. Quick break. We'll be right back.
Black power! 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 Black power!
back with you inside of the Africa Forum. It is Running African, and I know it is a distressing situation. It's also a depressing situation. We are taking your telephone calls in this segment of the program as we ask who is a visitor, how do we get rid of the visitor, how do we remove the Queen of England as a head of state, and to go a little bit beyond and be beneath all of just the talk and the rhetoric. And we've been talking for a while. What do we do now, and how do we do it? We're taking your telephone calls. We're seeing your responses on the social media. My sister Amani Tafari Amma, Dr. Amani Tafari Amma, as a lecturer at the University of the West Indies, she says, I can so identify with your conversation with Bert from a Rastafari lecturer perspective. And that is interesting because she lectures at UAH as a Rastafari.
Okay. Okay, so there was a caller who asked how it could be done.
Yes, and we have another caller holding, so we ask you to hold the line, caller.
Fine. Well, really, what we need to do is that, as you know, there's to make certain changes in the Constitution, there are some deeply entrenched clauses. She's so deeply involved in the Constitution, so we'll have to have a referendum in which the people will vote whether those clauses where she's referred to as head of both the judiciary, the legislature, and the executive, that those clauses should be removed from the Constitution. So we'll take a referendum and we put that vote to the people. But pray God we do some public education before, because as we've been saying since morning, there's a lot of miseducation that has led many Jamaican people to feel that she should remain there.
And there's no other way to do it than through the referendum?
It should be a referendum to change those clauses in the Constitution.
How is Barbados doing it?
Well,
what is
it's
Barbados
the same
doing
arrangement.
exactly?
Well, by way of newscast, I see that they say she's going to be removed, and Barbados is leading us in that move. I mean, Jamaica usually goes ahead of many things, but I think that Barbados is going ahead of us in this one.
And it's interesting because we've had these headlines coming out of Jamaica too, but maybe not to the extent that we see Barbados has gone. They seem to have taken a decision.
Yeah, they have taken that decision and they're moving forward. I mean,
okay.
So that, well, wherever the cane fire starts, hope it spreads down here,
Well said. All right, let's go back to the phone lines. Hotep?
Uncle Sineb.
Uncle Sineb Garnet. Uncle Sineb.
No, I'm Sineb. No. Morning, council.
Yes, sir. Morning. Question?
This place, talking about miseducation, this place up at the U that they call the Visitors Lodge. What am I doing?
That's a very good question.
You mean we should knock on the door of the Visitors Lodge? She may very well be behind the doors. I doubt that, but that's interesting. So her name is featured up there, Visitors Lodge. Okay. That's interesting.
That's interesting, isn't it?
Very interesting.
Why is it called the Visitors Lodge?
Because it is her lodge. It is not our lodge. You see, I was fooled into thinking that the Visitors Lodge is a place where when you come a function up at the U, you stay there. Now I am getting to understand there is no such thing.
And listen, do you believe that the Mona campus is a former plantation? If you look, you see the aqueduct, the brick walls. Mm-hmm. So on the very place.
And there have been archaeological finds there in terms of I think a burial place.
Yeah, of course. Yes. And it's the very place where we were enslaved. It's the very place where she continues to rule. Aren't we? Where's our dignity and pride?
But then beyond that, the University of the West Indies, where you expect critical thinking and radical action and change. So how come?
Yeah, I just don't know. But there are many times that her visits have taken her to the campus, and when she goes there, she's always opening some either department or. So her name is up there. I think she opened the law school too, and she was the one who opened it. So we not only we welcome her and we give her functions to do, because that's the thinking of the people who are in charge of us, the local lackeys.
Education, because I am seeing since this morning that the term independent really means INTHEPENTHEN. We are independent.
Yeah. Got it. I mean, it is for us as we go. This is a brand new year. We're in the first month of the Georgian calendar year. I think for now the rhetoric has to stop. And as Bert suggested just now, there are ways to make change. Can the electorate? What is the role of the electorate in feeding back to the government, back to the members of parliament to say we want this on the books? We want this as a referendum. Is there a role there? Yeah, all right, ask a question before Bert answers. Yes.
Asking council.
Yes, my brother.
Somebody call a committee that I am on.
Yeah.
A Ponzi. Is there room for action?
Somebody repeat that question, please.
I am on a committee.
Yes.
And someone refers to that committee as a Ponzi.
Yes.
Is there room for action?
Yes, sir, because the Ponzi scheme is something wrong. I mean, you could go and get relief from the courts, but that's free advice. So we want to talk about the visitor now, though.
It is connected to the visitor because that statement, thank you, Garnet. It is, it's connected to the visitor because that statement was made in the newspapers by Mr. Franklin Johnson, who is the one of the chief advisors to the Minister of Education. Why it is important? Because he did not say it as a private citizen.
Yes.
This is where I have a problem.
You refer to what as a Ponzi scheme?
The CARICOM, he says the CARICOM reparations brief is a Ponzi.
That means I'm part of that too?
CARICOM, he says the CARICOM reparations brief is a Ponzi.
That means I'm part of that too? That's what he really means?
Well, come to think of it, yes. I wasn't even thinking about that.
Let me just tell you how I look at it.
Yes.
During the 300 years of us seeking to free ourselves, there were people who told us among our ranks that freedom won't come and we shouldn't fight for it. So similarly, there are people among our ranks, then who felt that ending slavery was not possible. So there are going to be remnants of people who feel that getting reparations is not possible.
As private citizens is fine.
Yeah.
But if you are being paid from the public purse, from the taxes that I pay, if you are in a public servant because you're an advisor, you're a consultant at the Ministry of Education, that is the engine of in terms of how our children are fed, how they are miseducated, isn't it?
Yeah.
We talk about identity, you just talk about bleaching, we talk about self-esteem, knowing your history, knowing yourself, understanding who you are so you can participate in the global society as an independent individual. So all of that. So if you I think you need to read that article, Bert.
Okay.
I have a copy here I'm going to give you before you leave. It is still in the Jamaica Observer. It has been removed from one of the websites, so you have to search for it. But there are ways to retrieve articles when they are removed by websites. And I need to tell people there are ways to get the article in Thank you very much, Kwame Pianki, for showing me how to do that. Because when Good Works International removed all the articles and tried to make me out to be a liar, we found those articles, Bert.
Very good.
All right, so Bert, he also said CARICOM seeks to cash in on the blood of our ancestors. He says CARICOM reparations brief is a Ponzi. He cites a Windward Road Primary School student who said England should not pay reparations since Africans were enslaved by their own ancestors. And then he goes on to say, isn't it interesting that Africans are the only ones who sold themselves into slavery and continue to do so? He says reparations is the tip of a corrupt pile.
My God. And he's still employed there.
Today is 100 days, exactly 100 days since that publication in the newspaper. I think that the CARICOM Reparations Commission, that's Sir Hilary Beckles, need to respond because he went all the way to the Queen of England to present on behalf of the Caribbean people for reparations, didn't he?
Yes, but that gentleman, why doesn't he come for a debate on that issue?
Well, you wrote it in the newspaper. Who's going to debate him? Nobody has responded.
Okay. I really didn't.
So who's going to debate him? He's employed. My main concern is that he's employed in the Ministry of Education, and I think that he should step aside. Personally, I don't care what he thinks as a private individual. It doesn't matter. I can couch it and see it even from the perspective that you just pointed out. My main thing is that he's advising the Minister of Education, who has identified himself. I heard him speaking to Dr. Imani Tafari Amma and Sean Hay Webster, identifying himself in this nice way. I am a white Jamaican, as a white Jamaican myself. That is all the Minister of Education. He said it just recently. So we have a problem. The visitor, the white Jamaican, the Ponzi scheme, we have a problem, and it is all connected. Let me go to the phone lines. Hotep?
Good morning.
Yes, greetings, my brother. How are you doing?
Yes, Bert. It is refreshing listening to you always because of the stand that you take, and I will always say Andrea, right? But you know what? You are doing a very good job in letting us know a lot of things I did not know. So I listen to this program, I learn a lot. What the article Mr. Johnson has written is a sellout of the Jamaican people, right? All right. The Serbian Court of Justice now, when you get rid of the Privy Council, are we going to still hold those crown in place? Are we going to still hold the Queen as our Queen?
Well, the people,
and these, as I hear you discuss about these people that have these crowns to their name, are they still going to hold all of these crowns?
Well, that's interesting because the move to remove the Privy Council is not a move to remove the entire reference to the Queen of England. Yes, people are saying move the Privy Council, but they are not taking the principled position that it represents an alien, organization, an institution which enslaved us. So I think what you're saying is moving the Privy Council should be part and parcel and moving all vestiges of this monarch from our lives, not just the Privy Council, but elsewhere too. I agree with you.
That's why I like your argument at all times. That's why I don't support the CCJ in its present way that they are dealing with it. Because the CCJ, you can't get rid of the Privy Council, as you just said, and you still have the colonial system in place. These same people that hold us in slavery, these same people where you can't say what happened to the Germans, right? Was not wrong. Yet still, Mr. Cameron come here and disrespect us in our own parliament, and we sit here and accept that. Do we know where we want and where we want to go? What we want and where we want to go? Do we, Mr. Samuel?
No, we can't allow Cameron to his ideas, because his great-great-granduncle owned slaves in Jamaica. So he's really in the middle of it. But I don't know if that Ministry of Education person, if his bloodline owned slaves too.
You have to also look at what he says about David Cameron in that article. Because if this is what our students are being told, David Cameron, and what's the next one name from the Labour Party who is a radical, who win if him win next year, and so on. I mean, it don't matter who is the head, who is the head in terms of the Queen of England or anybody else, or who is the Prime Minister. It really doesn't matter if we, the people on the ground, do not understand. You see, because the status quo will remain, Bert, unless our children understand. And our children will not understand unless we teach them. We have to teach them in the home. But how can we teach them in the home when we were also part of the system of the school that don't tell us what you said at the first place, that Britain enslaved us, enslaved our ancestors? To me, it have to start with us right here on the ground. And Franklin Johnson to me right now is more important in removing from the Ministry of Education than David Cameron, because David Cameron not teaching our children.
And
that is true. That is true.
And we don't vote.
Well, I just hang up and listen.
Thank you, my brother. All right, yes, Bert, go ahead.
Yes, when will it happen? It will happen when the people make the correct demands. When we say, let me see what your manifesto is, and if your manifesto does not have on it removing that institution, we're not going to come out and give you our votes. I think that is where the people's power has to be
And but me ask you again, where does the people power come from? Because what part does knowing, and me not say knowledge, not education or miseducation, but knowing, what part does knowing play in understanding your power?
Well, if you educate the people, knowing the knowledge, we should employ the knowledge to liberate ourselves, and that is when we know we would just not go out to vote because the wrong things are in the manifesto.
Oh, goodness. Wow. All right, let's take a quick break. Now, 6 minutes going up to 8 o'clock, and we have 6 minutes left in this segment of the program. We're going to squeeze in 2 more questions for our Pan-African attorney, Bert Samuels.
Speak truth to the people. To identify the enemy is to free the mind. Free the mind of the people. Speak to the mind of the people. Speak truth.
So the numbers to call are 974-5079, 5051, 5043, and 1-888-991-4152. Lots of questions on the social media. We'll try, and if I could just find my phone, but we'll try and get those in the meantime. All right. So here's a question on Facebook saying, talking again about the visit, and I'm so far away, so I'm just going to paraphrase this question, which is asking if the visitor, how long has a visitor being a visitor? I think that's basically what the question is. Yes, sorry, Bert, I had your microphone off. Yes.
Well, listen how it works. Remember this idea of the visitor, both in England and for Jamaica, when the University College of the West Indies, as it was called before, is a college of the University of London, is that whoever is on the throne is the visitor. So when Elizabeth passes, if her son goes on or her grandson, then we would now have a king. It would not be the queen now in the constitution. We would have to change the constitution to the king, and therefore the visitor will always be the person who sits on the throne in Buckingham Palace. So it doesn't matter who's the person. If it becomes a king, then the visitor becomes the king. If it becomes Elizabeth's granddaughter, then that she will be the queen of England, and therefore she will be the visitor. So the visitor will always be who sits on that throne.
Boy, where do you go? Because if you go to Africa, it's the same thing.
Same colonial rule.
It's the same thing. So where do you go? So somebody else on Facebook asking about the crown lands.
Oh yes, that's a very ticklish thing. Now listen, remember the day, 1838, we were freed, they say. We had 100% unemployment, and we had 100% population, African Jamaican population, landless. Now these crown lands are lands that belong to the British government, which they stole from the Spanish. Crown lands in Jamaica represent stolen goods, stolen from the Spanish stole it from the Taínos. So if we were freed, then those lands should have been given to us. So crown lands in Jamaica belongs to the state, and it ought properly, in my view, to be given to the landless, because we worked here for 300 odd years without compensation. So my approach is the state should take the first, make the first move of example to let go those lands and give them to the landless.
Let's take this final call. Hotep?
Hotep?
Yes, greetings, my brother. Go ahead.
How are you?
Well, thanks.
Yeah. Greetings to our brother, Mr. Samuels.
Yeah. My brother.
Yeah. Now, I want to the case with that student at the U who could not go any further.
Yeah.
With her case to be taken to the House of Parliament, because this is going to be other students going to have the same problems, and this is going to be the same thing. You understand?
You know, I'm attracted to what you're saying because we should take it to the politicians for them to solve that problem.
Sure.
Yes, I agree with you. And maybe that shouldn't be the only thing on the agenda. We should find out from them why they're still passing laws which must reside in the name of the Queen, Her Majesty of England. We need to find that out. All the laws being passed in Parliament by our representatives must quote that these laws are passed in her name. So there's an agenda of the Queen of England related issues which they must, out of self-respect and self-dignity, debate. We need to put this in debate that all these references should be removed.
I think that should be done immediately, even tomorrow morning.
Thank you very much, caller. How tomorrow morning?
Yes, he said so. Monday morning, first thing.
All right, take a final one. All right, we'll take a final one quickly. Let's go to that one. All right, Hotep. Hello.
Yeah.
Yes. Go ahead. Yes. Good morning.
Andrea?
Yes. Go ahead.
Good morning.
Good morning
over
to
the
you.
world, and good morning to everyone who was listening at this moment, at this time.
Right. I'm sorry to tell you that you have 1 minute. You have 1 minute. Sorry.
Yeah, you first need to come to free with spirituality, connection with the source of life. That is what stripped your mind from mental slavery. So we don't know where we're going and we don't know where we're coming from. That is the first main topic. And the next one, spring start, the earth cycle of a new year.
All right,
March, April.
You have just 30 seconds. Do you have a question for Mr. Samuels?
Yeah, Mr. Samuel.
Yes, sir.
The first thing to free yourself from the mental slavery of our slave master is to go and start from the spiritual connection to life.
All right, you said it already. So thank you much. Thank you. We do have to go. All right. So he said that. You want to respond to that, right?
Well, the spiritual side. Well, I'm dealing with the literal side.
We're dealing with the spiritual right after this, actually, because Professor Tunde Biwaji is in the wings, waiting to come in to talk about the concept of God in African traditional spirituality. Fine. So we're segueing right into that in a little while.
Well, Kabu, it's the end of my time, but I just wanted to tell you that you're being heard all over the world. My client Ian Gordon, who visited from England, said that he was watching that trial live, and he's latched on to Area FM all the way in London every Sunday.
Good morning to you, Ian. To my brother. And thank you so much, Bert.
Always a pleasure. A duty to be here. And
we rely on you so heavily. So thank you so much for being here. You're going to have to come forward to continue this conversation. But in terms of operationalizing and action, what from here do you suggest?
Well, Kabu, I'm on the call list of people that you call, and I'm ready to join that fight. I mean, I'm in the fight already, as you know. I'm up against my own, these Ponzi-eyed people who refer to our compensation as a Ponzi scheme, which is so unfortunate. And I've just gotten the article. I'm going to try and respond to it. And therefore, we just have to keep the education going. Marcus Garvey did make it clear that if we don't educate ourselves, then we're not going to produce good limbs.
We have people on Facebook, our audience, our listeners on Facebook and Twitter asking for your contact numbers. I don't know if you're giving anything out or you just want to give an email address or what. I don't know.
Email address is my name. That's the easiest link. It's bert.samuels@gmail.com, and I'm prepared to answer questions raised with me after this.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Bert Samuels. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Bye.
All right. Well, good. Bert Samuels there. And what a task we've had. What a task we have ahead of us. What a task we have. But we are up to the task. We are ready and we are willing and we continue to defend ourselves, as our brother Fafai says. We're under attack, so we defend. Thank you once again, Bert Samuels.
Hide nothing from the masses of the people. Tell no lies. Expose lies whenever they are told. Mask no difficulties, mistakes, failures. Claim no easy victory.
No, people. What you just hear prove without a doubt that white people have an agenda, and that agenda is to maintain white superiority over us permanently. That is them plan. Them already control us in the church, in the economy, and we now know how they do it in the school. Them have a secret person named the Visitor. We now find out that the Visitor is the Queen of England. That is why immigration and the act of being a good immigrant is a course which will be taught in schools very soon. And that follow upon the tourism course which is now in place. So if you live in the island, the objective of the course in tourism is to guide us on how to appreciate, how to be thankful for the white tourists when they visit. And if you plan to immigrate, then that course on immigration will train us and guide us on how to behave and how to respect those same tourists when we go to freedom land. People, black people, we have no time to waste. Those who are not on our side are against us. For one reason or another, they represent the enemy. They represent those who enslaved us for over 400 years without pay, and only an enemy would do that. If our politicians no want work for we, if them is not prepared for work for we, since we is the one who pay them, then they must resign, or they should or will be fired. Them cannot continue to eat, drink and get paid by us while supporting and upholding those negative policies of our enemies. Policies were designed to mentally keep us in perpetual slavery as perpetual subordinates to white people. So, local politicians, you know the pan notice. It not go work. You have to do the right thing. If you don't do the right thing, you are going to lose power. Ashe.